Is happily ever after just a myth in fairy tales and movies? My guest today, Dr. Pauline Dillard of DunamassMarriages.com, says absolutely not. Even great marriages are possible.
Facing head-on the emotions beneath the surface as we bridge from an old world of confusion and lack to a beautiful new world of freedom, abundance, and love with straightforward truth and inspired hope is what you'll find on The Charla Anderson Show. Collector and connector of fascinating people. And everyone is fascinating. Here's your host, Charla Anderson.
Okay. Good, beautiful day, you beautiful, beautiful souls. This is Charla Anderson, host of The Charla Anderson Show, collector and connector of fascinating people, and everyone is fascinating, especially you. So grateful you would join us today. I want to ask this question. Is happily ever after just a myth in fairy tales and movies? My guest today, Dr. Pauline Dillard of DunamassMarriages.com, says absolutely not. Even great marriages are possible. But first, we're going to do our little mini vacation, a little 22-second breathing exercise. We're going to breathe in some calm for 7 seconds. We're going to hold for 4 seconds and breathe out gratitude for 11 seconds. So here, join me. Breathe in some calm for 7 seconds. Here we go. Hold. Relax, release. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm really grateful to have my special guest, Dr. Pauline Dillard of, we met at Bree Talks, right? Did we meet at Bree Talks?
I think so, yeah.
With Terry Lee Harrison.
Yes.
And she is a speaker's coach. She does all this amazing stuff. And so I've met some wonderful people through that group. Yes. And Dr. Pauline is just one of them. And I'm so excited to get to talk to her because marriage isn't the easiest thing on earth, and I've got a couple T-shirts, so been there, done that. So it's, I wish I had maybe had some of this type of encouragement. So Dr. Pauline, give us a little bit. Tell me who you are in this world. We're going to talk about who you really are, and then we're going to talk about what you do and how you serve our world.
Okay. Well, I'm Dr. Pauline Dillard, but I'm also a wife, I'm a mom, and I am a very committed follower of Christ. And when I talk about my conversion experience, I don't talk about inviting him into my heart. I talk about giving my life to the Lord. So from that perspective, I always pursue him for where I'm supposed to go and what I'm supposed to be doing. And so my first career was wife and mom. I did stay home with my children. I did some childbirth education during that time and birth assisting, but not so much it interfered with my ability to really be there for my children. And then as they got older, I felt God released me to go to graduate school. I had a bachelor's degree in psychology from California State University, Chico, where I had met my husband. So then I did my graduate work I felt like, I'll go to graduate school. This is awesome. I love education. I could be a student forever, but I have to follow what God has me doing. So I did my master's degree and my doctorate degree through South Florida Bible College and Theological Seminary, having no clue what God was going to do with me. Actually, I really just loved the research and I loved learning more and deeper about all that stuff. And then at one point, it was really funny because one day I kind of go, and my husband goes, "What did God just tell you to do?" And I said, "He just told me to be a counselor." And I had no designs on becoming a counselor. And he goes, "Well, what did you think he was going to tell you to do?" I said, "I had no clue." So while I was doing my graduate school, I got my master's. I did start doing counseling, but I was working on my PhD. I had to do probably, 3 or 4 classes on marriage. And I literally read those textbooks this way. Okay, well, that's never going to work. nope, that's never going to work. And I had been married over 20 years by that point. So, I had a sense of what was going on. And so I told God, and you know how it is, just tell God something. I do not want to be a marriage counselor. Do not have me do marriage counseling. It's a whole lot of work for very little return. And up until, say, sometime in the 2000s, typically people had a 10 to 15% success rate doing marriage counseling. Yeah. And counselors were accepting that as the acceptable rate. And even people doing the counseling were accepting that. And really, we have found that 10 to 15% of those people who are struggling are just going to stay married anyway, whether they do counseling or not. So God introduced me to this model, this method of counseling through a counselors group. This guy spoke there, of really understanding each other's heart and learning heart language and how to really care for people's hearts and how to really pray and how important forgiveness was and all of that stuff. And I just kind of asked my husband, would you just go to this? Not like we were on the verge of divorce, but you feel like there's something here in the middle that I just can't quite get to. And it just feels really empty. And it feels almost, like there's got to be a way to get in there. And that's what this guy was showing. And so my husband was like, sure, we can go. So I will tell you, Charla, I was like terrified to go. I felt, oh my God, I'm going to be so exposed. It's very scary to come into this because it's very deep, very fast. It's an intensive. It was, 5 days for 3 hours a day. So my husband and I went to this and we learned each other's heart language.
Can I ask, was it
Sure.
in person, 5 days in a local?
That was in person. Because of COVID, I've learned how to do Zoom. So people can actually do it from anywhere on Zoom. And I've learned how to, manage the technology and manage, the difficulties with doing it online. So people no longer even have to come in person, but I like it in person. I like the people sitting in front of me, but that was in person. And back then, nobody was really doing a lot of these things online back in the early 2000s. So we'd probably been married about 25 years when we did this. And it was so phenomenal to be able to understand each other's heart language, to learn how to daily care for each other's hearts, to know how to let God into those areas. And really, the forgiveness became so powerful. And my husband ran into our counselor out at a store or something one day. And the counselor said to my husband, does Pauline know that I do training? And my husband said, I don't think so. So keep in mind, my husband never commented on what I did and what God had me doing. He just trusted I was following what God led me to do. And he comes home and says to me, how can you know this and not do it? I was like, oh my gosh, that has to be from the Lord. So I guess I'm a marriage counselor.
So you never say never, right?
Never say never.
Don't say I'm not going to do that. Yeah.
Right. And this was in 2007, 2008. I got my doctorate in 2008 and I went and trained and, I've developed some things that are my own, because the other counselor that did this, he had been a pastor and then he would do this marriage counseling. Well, now I have a doctorate degree in psychology, so I'm able to bring in some elements that he doesn't bring in. I also understand trauma because I did, one of my thesis was on trauma following cesarean. So I understood PTSD really well and that sort of thing. So I bring those elements to what I do as well, to help people to release it. And really, ultimately, at the end of it, is the model method of forgiveness is like so open and so clear with the Lord, and it goes after one piece at a time. So let me kind of, I guess, explain what I mean by that. So most of the time, we say, oh, I choose to forgive my dad for everything he did. And then it doesn't disconnect. And then a month later, we're still in pain and we don't understand why we're in pain. So then somebody comes to the church, the special speaker, I call it, and he talks about forgiving. And if you want to be forgiving, come up to the altar and pray what I call the prayer. Okay. So you go up, you pray the prayer, and you feel good for a while, maybe a few days, maybe a few weeks, if you're lucky, a few months. But pretty soon you start to realize you still have some pain and bitterness there. So what we have found is, and I really want to talk about this because this is really one of the biggest issues in marriage, is we're bitter, we're angry. We don't know how to release it properly. We don't know how to ask for forgiveness, and we don't know how to really truly give forgiveness in a way that can be really effective. So
can I ask you this? You're talking about a lot about forgiveness, and I mean, I'm not asking this for me because I pretty much know the answer, but I feel like, in a marriage, what is it about forgiveness? They're just not doing what I want. They're just not doing the way and I believe I like the term preferences. They don't do this. They squeeze the toothpaste wrong, and then it builds up, little things that, but do people coming into counseling say, I need to forgive my husband for this, or, are they recognizing that right up front? Because I wrote a forgiveness release. My niece wrote a Power of Forgiveness book and has a Forgiveness Academy. I know a lot more about it than probably most people do.
Right. Well, a lot of them know that they have to forgive because, people are people and they do what I call stupid things, and then they make us mad, and then we have to forgive. And so it really is less about what they're actually doing. And I mean, if somebody's abusive, I will draw a line there. I will say, like, if somebody's being really, especially physically abusive, I will be like, you call the police immediately. So
and I wrote a book, Candy Bar Hugs. It doesn't take much to make a difference, but in there I have a little unconditional love, unconditional forgiveness, not unconditional boundaries. I mean, you definitely have.
Correct. And
yes.
People ask boundaries. Me all the time when it comes to like forgiving their parents or forgiving other people. Do I have to have relationship with that person if I forgive them? And no, forgiveness and relationship are two different things. It really is a matter of let's break away from what I call family rules and do forgiveness work, and then see what God would have you do. What does Jesus want you to do? Because we are supposed to honor our mother and father. And sometimes the best way to honor them is to back away from relationship for a season, and really hear what God would have you to do. And what people don't realize in a marriage is we're never really fighting about what we're fighting about. We're fighting about this emotional disrespect. I'll show you some things here in a minute to help really clarify some of this. And so like you say, they squeeze the toothpaste wrong. Is it really about toothpaste, or is it about not feeling heard, not feeling valued, not feeling respected? And by the way, if you don't want a problem with the toothpaste tube, just have your own separate tubes.
We'll find a way.
And then you don't have to worry about the toothpaste. But the other thing is we always want the other person to change. And we're always asking God to change the other person. But really, we need to be saying, how do I change my own heart too towards that other person? Not that they shouldn't care about you. In a marriage, we should really focus to care. God designed marriage. He designed marriage actually to be a safe place to land because the world is so harsh. And so we're supposed to be a safe place to land. We're supposed to be a calm, quiet place to land. But when we get frustrated with our spouse and we start praying for God to change them, are we not really mad at God? I mean, aren't we really mad at God because he won't mind me and make that other person be the way I want them to be? And so people are always shocked when I say, well, you need to say a forgiveness prayer for God. Now, God doesn't need our forgiveness. I know. God doesn't really need our forgiveness, but the enemy uses our bitterness to block our relationship with God. And so when I show you the prayer that I use, you'll see how that can tie in. And so people go, forgive God. I'm not mad at God. And I go, well, okay, if you're not, that's fine. But let's really just look at, usually I'm just mad at him because he doesn't mind me. That's, and then I might have to say a prayer for him. So basically what we find in this is you have to identify a specific person. who has done a specific thing, causing you a specific pain. And that's what you want to release. And you choose to forgive, as you probably well know. We can choose not to. I don't recommend it, but we often do choose not to. But forgiveness is always a choice. And so really it starts with that. Will I choose to forgive? So how do we get to that, to where we can identify that? So what I'm going to do is share my screen for a minute and show you just a couple of the little tools I use to help people pin this down, if that's okay.
That's awesome. And I want, because I want not only helping them, I want to hear your story of, your overcoming as well. That's and we, so often we teach what we need to learn, right? So
Yeah. Sorry, I thought this was just on the single screen. Let me just pull out for just a moment, and then it'll make it a lot easier for me to show you what I'm trying to do here. Maybe I can do that. Maybe I can't. I don't know.
Be sure to send the slides so that I can put them in the blog when the blog comes out in a couple of weeks. So
I just thought I thought I had it set up so you wouldn't have to see all of them at one time.
Well, if it's Zoom, it's going to change when you think you got it down. So.
Just when you think you've got it all figured out. Okay. Yeah. Well, this is the first slide. This is the first tool I give to people. And really what we're looking at is, how do you get stuck? How do we get caught? I call it a web of pain. So what I have is both parties do this. This outside circle here is emotional pain words. This one. This is what we call pressure patterns or pressure pain. Like if somebody does it to you or around you, even to other people, does it bother you? And then we have abuse pain. Now we also have like our spiritual areas that we can get off in here. There's 6 of them. And this is what most people focus on in the church. Just don't be bitter. Don't be hypocritical. You got to just change that and grow. And these are the areas that the enemy uses that are listed in scripture, but they're also the areas the enemy likes to really come into. So what I do is I have people identify, have you ever felt this or whatever? And then how might I react, or how have I reacted spiritually? So when they're done, it looks something like that.
So I want to just remind you that this is live TV, and so make sure you explain it, because most listeners will be in podcast in the future. So just explain it to where.
What you're going to do is you're going to circle whatever emotional pain words there are, or like here, or you're going to your pressure patterns or your abuse pain. And I'm just going to go back for a minute because I can't really see through all that myself. So what we end up with is the 6 areas that the enemy's attacking you on is your rebellion or defiance, hypocrisy or like pretending, sexual behavior outside of marriage, before marriage, in marriage, occult practices or drug use, bitterness, and under bitterness is anger and unforgiveness. And that's this one. I have the wrong thing there because that one is supposed to be pride. And then we have turning to other things, which is like watching TV, playing video games, shopping, things to avoid dealing with your emotions that are not going to God, if that makes sense. Okay, so then it kind of ends up looking like this with all these lines and arrows going to what you do in your spiritual behaviors. So what happens in the church, Charla, is most people use the Bible as a lawnmower here. Because we're having this misbehavior, we've got all this ugly hanging out. And so they use it to kind of like just behave better, kind of cut that off. And then we don't see the ugly. But anytime your heart gets bumped, it comes out. And we can't figure out, why do I keep doing the same things, the things I don't want to do? And it's because the Bible says that the enemy is looking for whom to sling his fiery darts at. And to me, that means these arrows go straight into our heart, and then these hooks come out and they grab our heart. So we cut this off, we cut off the ugly hanging out, but there's still these hooks inside. And we want to unhook those. And the way to unhook those is through forgiveness. That actually unhooks it, but we have to unhook the pain. And so too often we do sort of a surface forgiveness of, I choose to forgive. but we're not really, what am I forgiving? What am I unhooking? What am I dealing with? And so to find that out, and this, I have a little free workbook on my website about the web of pain. People can actually download this and they can go through it together. And when you get two of them, I have the couples put them together, and look through the light at it. And that's how they're trying to have marriage. And you come into marriage with this. Most people, the marital partner did not create it. It was already there. But what are we really good at in marriage? Bumping up against pain. And the longer we live together, we can get pretty good at grinding our heel into it too. So any word that's been circled on here is what I call a pain button. So
are you talking about circled on on
the web of pain, the emotional pain words, the pressure pattern words, and the abuse pain? So when my spouse is reacting rebelliously or with anger, things like that, I just hit something. I just hit something that maybe I didn't even create, but it's there. So when we're fighting over the tube of toothpaste and the disrespect, it may be that the anger is bigger than the situation today because there's all this pain behind it, pressing into it, and you just stepped all over it. And so you think, why is this person reacting so big to such a
straw that broke the camel's back? Or it's been there all along, and finally it's like, they're doing this to me. They're doing this to me, right?
Because
instead of it's just doing what they're doing.
Right. They're just doing what they're doing, and they're hitting the pain button. Now, I've gotten permission from my husband to tell our stuff because I said, I have to tell our stuff if I'm going to be able to really help people to understand this. And this is going to sound...
So come on, if you're going to talk about your stuff right now, why don't you come on screen for...
yes, that's fine. Okay, so it's a really silly thing, but in retrospect, but at the time when I was at home being a housewife and a mom and doing all this stuff, my husband had this really bad habit of dropping his underwear right in front of the laundry hamper. Not in it, right in front of it. Okay. So then when I would go by, I'd just be like, oh my God, he does this on purpose. He does this to just frustrate me. He does this, and I had all these reasons why he did it that had to do with offending me.
And that you made up stories about it.
In my brain, it was the disrespect. It's like he doesn't care how hard I work. He doesn't, I just came up with all kinds, and I could come up with a lot of little things that he comes up with. But if I were to ask him, he would have to him a logical reason for doing it. Okay. But I would just be mad and, oh my God, I can't believe you disrespect me. Now, this sounds really silly because I said earlier, I have to have a specific person, a specific thing, and specific pain words. So in this instance, it's my husband. It's dropping his underwear in front of the laundry hamper instead of just putting it in the laundry hamper, causing me to feel disrespected, discounted, not valued, time not valued, those kinds of things. So that's the first part, is I have to identify what the problem is. Now, the second part of the prayer I use with people, a lot of times people don't really understand it and they struggle with this piece. But the second part is, I'm willing to pay for the emotional pain and consequence my husband caused me. I know. Why? Well, people go, well, yes, Jesus paid for our sins, but he also told us to do greater things than he did.
John 14:12, my favorite, because he can do what Jesus did and even more. And this isn't about religion. This is about relationships.
Absolutely. And also, let's say my husband doing that is not just triggering from him, but that I had a sibling who always broke my stuff or wouldn't put my things away. And I felt disrespected and disregarded and discounted. And now it's bringing all of that into play too. So I also have to choose to forgive my sibling for messing with my stuff, causing me to feel all those same things. And I have to choose to pay because sin has to be paid for. We know that. That's why Jesus went to the cross. But if that sibling walked in and said to me, here's $10,000. Don't ever feel bad about me breaking your toys ever again. Do you think all my pain's going to go away?
No, but thank you. Yeah.
Take it. Usually it's parents that people want to get that from. But the first part, I am taking ownership of the fact that I have that pain. Does that make sense? Like, I choose to forgive this person for this thing making me feel this way. I have it. The second part, I'm paying for it because I have to pay for what's mine. I can't give to Jesus anything that's not mine. So, I could say to you, Charla, I'm just going to give Jesus that book behind you. And Jesus is going to say to me, no, you're not. It's not your book. You can't do that. But if I said to you, Charla, can I pay you for that book? And then can I have it? And you go, yes. And we negotiate a price. Now I can give it to Jesus. I can do whatever I want with it. I've owned it. I've paid for it. I have it. What do I want to do with it? Now I'm choosing to give it to Jesus. So this is where Jesus, I take back the ground. Or no, sorry, I misspoke. Jesus, take back the ground I gave to the enemy through my bitterness, and I yield it to his control. So when we do it that way, we're acknowledging it, we're disconnecting the pain, we're giving it to the Lord. And now we're also blocking the enemy from being able to use our bitterness against us, against our marriage, and against our relationships. And I had a client one time, he kept saying, Lord, take back the ground the enemy stole from me. I'm like, stop. He can't steal it from us unless we've given him legal permission to come in. And we do that by our own bitterness. We give it to him. So now I've got all this bitterness from my past that I bring with me, which is what that web of pain is all about. My husband has his. And now we're trying to have a marriage. And now we're stepping all over it. So
and we take everything personally.
We do, especially if we've got that pain. And I'm just going to tell you, I don't care how much of it you have. If it gets hit, it's going to fire off. But once I start to really deeply forgive, now I say those prayers, it's not going to disconnect the first time I say it for all of it. Some will, some won't. So you have to pray it every day until it disconnects. I can't tell you how long that's going to take. But I will talk about what I had to overcome when I learned this prayer. And this was way back, like I said, 2007, 2008. I had some very severe trauma from church, from a borderline cultic church. Very severe. I did not trust pastors. I did not like Christians. I still went to church because the Bible says, do not forsake the gathering together of the saints. Now, the pastors and the Christians that I was with at that time, they didn't know, but they would hit and bump up against this pain. And I knew intellectually, okay, they're not really trying to hit it. They're not really intentionally trying to go after me, blah, blah, blah. Well, I live at the top of a hill. And when I come to my office, I come down that big hill and there's a church right at the bottom. So every day when I would crest that hill, the church would remind me to start praying. And I prayed this prayer for pastors, for specific people, for congregations in general, for churches. And I'll tell you, Charla, I did that every day for 2 weeks. And then after 2 weeks, I came over the crest. I opened my mouth because you have to pray out loud, I believe. I believe the enemy can't read our mind based on Jesus' example in John chapter 4, where he speaks out loud. And so I start to pray, and all of a sudden I realized none of that bothers me anymore. And it was just daily praying forgiveness. there's so many things with my husband, I still have to deal with, because you live with people and they, but love him to death. He's been an amazing provider. We've been married 42 years now, coming up on 43 in May. And we've gone through all this together, and we still have our moments, and he can still hit a pain button once in a while. And, I'm really working hard on not overreacting to that, but I'm not going to say I'm 100% because we're human beings. And then I have to just go back and, repray it. But with the church stuff, I just
Does he put his underwear in the basket now?
He does put his underwear in the basket, but he hangs his work shirts over the side. And
I'm sure there was something in his mom probably had some little something anyway.
Well, I asked him, why do you hang this stuff? I just walk by and tip it in, because there's no personal.
He's not doing it against you. See, that's the deal.
He's not.
So many. I feel like when I came up with this, I was a little teenager with she's having to move because her daddy's getting remarried and how, all this. And she was all upset. And I said, I just want you to consider that I don't think he's doing it against you. He's doing it for him, thinking that it's going to bless you. So sometimes we get backwards on it's all about me, right? So take everything personally. And we make assumptions. My favorite book is The Four Agreements that I recommend, because, we all take things personally and make assumptions, and our world would be so much less dramatic if we would learn to.
Well, it's really funny because after I released myself from the churches and stuff, I was talking to a lady at church, and she happened to be the pastor's secretary. We were friends. And this pastor walked up, and he interfered in our conversation. And he's like, oh, what am I supposed to do with her? And I just said, I don't know, maybe you could just care for her heart. And he literally turned on his heels and walked away from me. And I just went back to my conversation, because at this point, I'm not taking these things personally anymore, because I've learned how to forgive. And she goes, hey, wait a minute. He just walked away from you. And I said, yeah, I know. I saw it. And then I went back to my conversation, and she goes, but he just walked away from you. And I said, yes, I know. I saw it. She goes, he turned his back and he walked. And she was
He couldn't handle your truth.
No. And I said, I know. I saw it. And she goes, well, didn't that bother you? And I said, no, it did not bother me. And here's why. Because that was more about his pain buttons than it was about what he said to me. And that's, once I learned that, I was able to use that quite frequently when people misbehave. Now, I can't do it with, 100% with everybody, because there's just some people who are too deep into your heart, and they just, keep digging. And like you said, with dads leaving and all that, I was that little girl whose dad left and didn't see the pain he was causing. Yeah. And just was doing what he wanted to do. And it just got so bad, I couldn't really even talk to him without just being in severe pain as an adult. And it was really funny, because my sister said one time, yeah, Dad, always wondered what to do with you. And I didn't think of it at the time, Charla, but later I thought, you know what he needed to do? He needed to say, I'm sorry. But now when you do this forgiveness prayer, it doesn't matter whether they say I'm sorry or not. And once I was able to really forgive him and release him, I'm able to also remember the fun things he did when I was little, and, how he was as kind of a daddy when I was a little girl. And, I'm not mad anymore. And I'm, he did die. He died from Lou Gehrig's disease. But, after that, after learning how to forgive.
And so you keep referring to this forgiveness prayer. Is it more than just those two sentences? Is it a structured?
It's a little bit of a structured prayer. Here, I'm going to go back to the sharing so I can show you, because I have it on here. So what I have people do, and this is just a partial list here, is identify emotional pain words. I have this whole long list, and it's just circle anything you've ever felt. Because we use a lot of I'm sad, I'm mad, I'm upset, I'm angry, and those are really just surface words. our pain is really about something else. And then after they circle that, I go to this, and I've got 6 boxes or 6 more. Another one is like pressure to perform.
What? Read the title. So,
Okay, the top one says not loved, not valued, put down. And then there's 3 more that are pressure to perform, a blame, shame core, and then abuse pain or taken advantage of in some form. And so this helps us identify who are those people. You know, I've got the emotion. There's 2 ways you can come into it. One is, I know I have the emotional pain. This is the person who caused me to feel that way. So I have them put down people who basically made them feel not loved, basically made them feel not valued, like their mom, their dad. Here they have sister, their spouse could do it. We could have God. We could feel like God did it to us. We could feel like we've done it to ourselves. And this helps us to go, oh, they made me feel this way. What did they do that caused me to feel this way? And then you start making a list. Like, you know, my dad, and the list might be abandoned me, and then, or left mom, or never came to visit when after he left, kind of thing. And then what are the emotional pain words? And you just pick 4 or 5, whatever emotional pain words there are. Now, then you come to this forgiveness prayer at the bottom. I just put this up here for an example. And this is that prayer I just said, Lord, I choose to forgive my dad for leaving the family, causing me to feel abandoned, not loved, not cared for, not valued, whatever. I'm willing to pay for the emotional pain and consequences my dad caused me in this instance. And Jesus, take back the ground I gave to the enemy through my bitterness, and I yield that ground to your control. And
so really it's straightforward. But I believe people that are not in the religious world, so to speak, there's a lot of challenging words, and in some ways are
they're challenging words. And Charla, I have spoken about healing from trauma and things like that, and post-trauma growth in like junior colleges and settings that were not Christian settings. And really, I just basically let people know this is how I would approach it. Now, you can take this, change it however you want, but personally for me, I don't see how it works without the Lord. But other people, once they own it, once they pay for it, they can do really whatever they want with it. And this is what I would do. And this is what I do. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. So I just wanted to, 10 years from now, somebody's listening to this, they may, on the podcast may not.
Right. And so, I will tell you also, Charla, my sister's not a Christian, but I've walked her through some of this, and she's adapted it and gotten a huge amount of freedom with how she's able to use it. And, I just talked to her a lot about, you have to choose to forgive. You have to identify what it's done. And
it's all choice. And it's something you said a while ago. I remember telling some kids that, it's like, nobody can hurt your feelings without your permission. Nobody can make you angry without your permission. Nobody, you can choose right. to deflect that as well. And then in my candy bar hugs, it doesn't take much to make a difference. This tiny little book, big messages to my children. I have what I call a forgiveness release. And it's like, I did what I did. I didn't do what I didn't do.
Well, right. And I'll talk about that too in just a minute. These things are also in my workbook, which is available at the website. So I have a PDF on this right now, and it's getting ready to come out through Lulu if somebody wants like a print and ship hard copy. It'll be out pretty soon. So that is all
it's called Blueprints for a Thriving Marriage, Tools and Strategies for Christ-Centered Lasting Relationship by Dr. Pauline Dillard, PhD. So having to kind of look around my camera here, but
I know, sorry, I know, trying to find what you're looking for. I'm going to turn this off again because I didn't put it up there, but you're right. You also have to choose to ask for forgiveness. Now, we have a tendency to go, I'm sorry, okay? well, no, it's not okay. I'm sorry, clouds just came over. I have all my windows open. I can see now. It's a little bit darker and I forgot my light ring. So I'm kind of,
Oh, you look
we have
fine.
snow, we have cold. So as long as it's okay for you, we do that all the time. And then we have this, well, you're a Christian, you have to forgive me. Well, no, I don't. I mean, that's between me and God at that point. But yet, we also should take responsibility for what we have done that has damaged other people's hearts. And so it's very easy too, but it's like, I was wrong for, and you have to name something specific you did. Now, as a parent, I know sometimes we're not wrong. Like, no, I'm not going to let you go spend the night at your friend's house whose parents are drug dealers. That's, but I have to do it. And so you may, but they get really angry and their heart gets bitter. And so you might say, I'm sorry that I had to. So you either say, I was wrong for, or I'm sorry that I had to, depending on the situation. And you put in a specific, causing you to feel, now I'm going to try to put myself in your place. I'm going to acknowledge the pain it caused you. And I might say, causing you to feel left out or angry or that I don't listen to you or whatever it might be. The person might go, no, that's not it. Okay, can you help me to know what it is? Because if I can connect my behavior to how it hurts somebody else's heart, they have a much better sense that you get it. And remember, Jesus said that don't call your brother Raka, which is basically call them names or damage their heart, because you might as well be thrown in the lake and drowned because you've killed their hearts. I'm paraphrasing, but basically in Matthew, I think it's 7. I'm terrible at addresses. But anyway, so we've done this. Now, once I've identified that, I want the other person looking me in the eye, especially for this part. Look at me. I make them look in the eye because the heart's in the eye. Will you choose to forgive me? Now it's in their court. Now, that's not getting off easy because for me to, you know how hard it is for us to acknowledge our side of the street, like you just said, telling your kids, I did this. I'm sorry. I did the best. I realize
what I knew. I did what I did. I didn't do what I didn't do. I did all that I knew to do with what I knew at the time, just like
correct.
you're doing in your life right now. I love you. And that's.
But, I did this with my kids, identifying specific things after I'd already forgiven myself. Because you can't go into that conversation upset and hurt with yourself and, oh, I'm a terrible mom and all this. You have to be solid and strong and ready for it. And exactly what you said. I know I did the very best that I could with what I had at the time, but it wasn't the best for that child. And so it's okay for me to say either I was wrong for not recognizing it, or I'm sorry that I had to do this. And I have 3 sons, they're all adults. And at the time I did go to each one of them one at a time and did this. I was wrong for, your dad and I were wrong for not knowing how to really love each other the way you needed us to love each other at that time and all this. And they're all so different. It's funny because my oldest son kept going, no, Mom, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. And I'm like, no, it wasn't okay. And look at me. I'm fine. Let's talk about it. And then he was able to, release and all of that. My youngest one wanted to have a 2.5-hour conversation where I'm going, okay, I didn't sign up for this. Okay. But you do it because you love them and you want to make sure that they know that, yes, you've changed. Now you understand. Now you're listening.
And now they're heard. See, I just want to be heard. And often right. For what I am not able to speak. Right. So
but he's also my talker and we'll go into deeper conversations. Our middle son, who was so funny because he was like, okay. But, I had a great childhood. I lived my childhood. And we're like, all right. So, each one of them experiences you differently, and each one of them affects you differently when they're born. Their personalities affect you as much as you do them. And so it's very interesting to see. And then with my husband and I, we learned how to sit down on a daily basis for about 30 minutes a day and really connect to care for each other's hearts. What I have people do is I have them do a prayer in the counseling that I kind of lead them through to connect to Jesus, to find out what does their heart look like with all this damage? And how do they protect their hearts? And people give me some amazing descriptions of what they do to protect their hearts. Some of them put them in a cement safe. And then I have to start asking them, are there any doors or windows? Is there a top on that? If, like say it's the woman, and I always talk about little boys and little girls because that's where our heart is. We get to the heart really quickly. And Jesus said, come to me as a child. So we want to address that. But I'll ask them things like, well, if there's no doors or windows or locks, if a little boy got a shovel, could he dig down underneath it to get to your heart and care for it? But really, it is the sitting and being heard, as you just said, that I was heard. And asking forgiveness when you've really hurt the other person, and giving forgiveness when they've hurt you, that opens all of that up. And after they come to me, I just tell them, I'm going to give you all the tools you need to do this. I'm going to teach you how to use those tools. And then I am not going home with you. So you have to decide what you're going to do with it. Now, if you do it for about 2 months, it often can, on average, about 2 months, those hearts will heal. They'll start to heal. And there's so many things now that I was just thinking about, even when I think about doing a podcast and the overcoming piece, that used to just throw my entire day. I mean, just, oh my God, how could they do that to me? And I can't even think, and I can't even get anything done now because I can't think. That I just kind of go, okay, well, it wasn't nice, but I just choose to forgive them and pay for it and move on. So,
why do we continue? Yeah, so often we continue dwelling and retelling a million times the same old story. The reason and what that is doing is cementing it into the stuff you don't want, right? Instead of the possibilities of moving forward. Because I'm a mindset coach. I mean, that's everything I know is we have opportunities to receive.
So this I didn't put up here, but I'm going to try to explain it because I think it fits here very perfectly. This is something that the Lord showed me when I was studying trauma. And so what happens is we have a traumatic event or a trigger, something that reminds us of that traumatic event. And our hormones will shoot up really high, our stress hormones. And that'll be adrenalines, norepinephrines, all of that. We have to remember we're body, mind, and spirit, and all of parts of us are impacted. So this is a physical piece. They shoot up really high. While they're up high, we are having thoughts and beliefs about what's happening to us. So now our physiology actually creates a rut in the system. So anytime those hormones shoot up high, they literally create those thoughts and beliefs. Okay. So when we want to come down, and I have this whole drawing of it, when we want to calm down, we look for something to calm that system down. Now, God has actually created a system inside of us that produces an opioid-like compound inside our own system to calm us down. But it's either broken, it's been, everything's gone to entropy since Adam and Eve. And so or the trauma was so great, it broke that system. So we could look at something like 9/11. Everybody was traumatized. But 3 months later, some people were back to work. They were getting life back in order. And yet we know even this many years later, there's some people who've never overcome it. So that's why opioids work. That's why we have an opioid crisis in the United States too. So people look for something to help them. And that's where they stumble across their thing, in quotes. And it could be drinking, it could be drugs, it could be cutting, it could be shopping, it could be video games, because it kicks this system in and they calm down. So from the time the system kicks in until they calm down, or they calm down until it comes back down, then they go into depression, anxiety. They don't like that. So they might recreate something actually to get into the drug system. It's actually a drug cycle. And you wonder why a drug addict starts a fight with you so they can leave the house and blame you is because they want to go hook up with their drug. And that's really what we're doing here with this system. So you're wondering, why is this happening? This is why it's happening. And so then the person does something and their spouse is going, why are you shopping again? What's going on? And then they're stressed and depressed and in bed the next day because it hits them. Now, can you retrain this system? Yes, you can. Okay. Forgiveness.
There's the good news, because everything I talk about, I want to have hope, right? And we don't have much longer here, so we got to get some.
Okay, I'm going to go really
points in here. And
yes,
I want to wait, but wait.
Okay.
Dr. Pauline Dillard, Pauline Dillard, with Dunamas marriages.com, and that's Dunamas marriages.com. The reason so many people will listen instead of watch, and so we want to make sure we get it clear and get it in there before the end of the show. And I'm grateful for the for you to be here and get these last words in. And and Dunamas means what? How did you come up with that word?
Spirit-filled.
It's spirit-filled?
Yes, okay. I prayed and the Lord said Dunamas, because it does take the Holy Spirit active in our lives to accomplish all this. So on this trauma cycle, you want to approach it physically. Am I getting the right nutrition? You've got that going on back there. Because if the neurotransmitters are all lipoproteins, and if that balance is off, you're not producing the right lipoproteins. You do not have a Prozac deficiency, most likely. You just need to rebuild the system itself. I could go into that whole thing sometime about how the brain does that. But then, so eating well is a big part of it. Forgiveness helps you to change the story, what you believe is what you were mentioning that. And it also helps me change my thoughts. Now, I'm going to tell you, having gone through clinical depression for 5 years and learning this forgiveness prayer changed my mind and healed my mind more than anything any other counseling has ever done for me. So that's why I'm so passionate about it. And so I changed my nutrition, I did my exercise, I did the forgiveness work, and I confront automatic negative thinking. We call them ants. And so when that trigger hits, you get that automatic negative thinking. It's automatic. That's why we call it automatic. And then people say, why do you want to think like that? And I always go, I don't know, because it's so much fun. I mean, who wants to think like that? Who wants to be stuck in that? And so they get comfortable in that pattern. I mean, it may not be what they don't like it, but they might be they are probably comfortable there. It's what they know, but they're not usually comfortable, if that makes sense. And so, but that's what they know. Is what they're familiar with. Is probably more what they're more terrified of what the different might be than they are of where they are, even though it's so uncomfortable. And it's really interesting because I do have to talk to them about, you need to confront it. You need to say, well, I'm not happy here. Why don't I give myself a chance to try something else? And so through the automatic negative thinking pieces, I'm going to be really, really honest here, Charla, with your audience, that sometimes I still have those thoughts come in because the enemy wants to trigger it, or my systems get triggered, or I ate too much sugar, or whatever it was. But I don't let them control what I choose to do for the day. I do speak back to it that those are the lies that I have believed, but they're not the truth today, even though they're both there. I've got Jesus there and I've got the enemy, a sort of, that little angel devil thing going on. But it does not have to control what you choose to do with it. And that used to make me super mad when I was stuck in the automatic thinking. Well, you choose to think that way. You don't understand how I can't help it. But I do understand now how to help it. But it took really being honest with the bitterness and how I was stuck in the bitterness, and that's what was triggering my anger with other people. They weren't necessarily intentionally trying to hurt me, even though their actions did hurt me. So I had to change some of my thinking. I had to let Jesus come in and really pursue that forgiveness no matter how long it took. And I had to pay attention to my body. And so those three elements are so important together.
Well, this is fascinating to me. Mindset and relationships. I have. I don't think it was original, but there's a cute little way of handling marriage and my upsets. And that would be. And I sometimes give this as a wedding gift, a little stuffed animal of an elephant. And, so often when in a relationship, somebody's coming in and saying, you did this, and, all of a sudden they come home from work, they're just doing what they do. And you've been building up all day as something you want to talk about. And what if you put this little elephant on the bed or in the coffee table, or whatever is the right place for you, so that you both know there's something to be discussed without having to say it. And it's just kind of a comical or a silly little simple thing, so that you can actually work towards having a communication rather than a fight. And so,
right. When I see your little girl and you see mine, and we understand the damage they carry, and I care about that, then I also don't want to do anything that's going to damage that little boy or that little girl. And so I tend to approach it more gently, more kindly.
And that's what your whole thing is about, the heart, right? How learning to love the heart. Speak just one quick minute, the last words you want to talk about, because we've got just a couple minutes before time to go. So what is your last word you want to get everybody to know, and how you have a free gift and all those things you want to offer?
Okay. So what I want to do is help people have marriages that honor God. So they're Christ-centered, heart-connecting, and spirit-filled. And I do offer like a 1-hour appointment where you can kind of talk about what's going on and what you would want to accomplish and what that could look like for you. And I do also offer that workbook, the free workbook that has the web of pain in it. And I'm going to do the share again just because I can have a QR code. If anybody's on video, they can do the QR code and get those free things there. Or the dunamasmarriages.com. You can go there and go to products, like dunamasmarriages.com/products, and the free things will pop up there as well. And so that way you can find out and meet with me and get some ideas before you commit to, a full intensive. Because a lot of times people are like, I don't know, but you're not necessarily going to be doing an intensive because your marriage is falling apart, which it could be, and I've seen those, or you could be doing it just because that space, I just want to be more intimate with my spouse. I just want to get into that place we've never gotten to. And I have an 83% success rate.
That's massive. I know that's massive. You said in the very beginning, there's a 15 to 20% success rate with marriage counseling. And I think I'm grateful to know that there is something out there that does and is more effective. And that when we learn to love, this is one of the ways I say it, people don't love themselves enough to know how to learn to love others. We've got the heart-shaped, God-shaped hole in our hearts, and we don't understand how to love others because we don't know how to love ourselves. And I think that you have something here that is directed for marriages, good or bad or ugly marriages. The fairy tale, the happily ever after, is possible, right? So it doesn't mean it's perfect.
Doesn't mean you don't have to work still. But
it's not perfect. We're not looking for perfection. We're looking for progress and love. And so I've got to shut her down. Thank you so much for being my guest today. I'm so happy that
having me
connect.
I just love sharing it.
Well, I can tell that. Well, blessings, and everybody always remember to choose joy.
Parting is such sweet sorrow. The Charla Anderson Show. Encouraging you to stand strong and courageous with bold faith, no fear, immense hope, kindness, and love, especially towards yourself. Visit charlaanderson.com for replays, blogs, and more on her ever-expanding website. as well as watch her live TV show on winwinwomen.tv, Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. And so that we can continue learning together and growing this community of beautiful souls, we invite you to share the Charla Anderson Show with your circle of friends. Until we meet again next week, remember always, choose joy.